Merry Christmas, you lot. You're right. It's that time of year once more, where all the YouTubers are scrambling to find a seasonal game to cover, or just throwing in the towel altogether.
I guess technically this is the Christmas episode. Though, like I said last year, I give up. Christmas has fallen.
As for me, someone that definitely isn't a YouTuber, the game I'm picking for this year is... seriously, real talk. Finding a Christmas-themed game to base an episode on is hard. But finding a game that hasn't been absolutely covered over and over, again and again, is nearly impossible. Every game I had in mind has been thoroughly overexposed. The problem with Christmas games is they are either already well known, if any good, or absolute shovelware trash. So rather than make a retrospective on one overexposed Christmas game, I'm making a retrospective on 5 overexposed Christmas games, burning all my material at once. Oh yeah, I are smart. I really enjoyed making the last Game Vault video using this multi-game format, and it was quite popular by my standards, so I thought we would go again. And the hook this time? 16-bit games. Yes, we are venturing into the 4th generation, concentrating on the Mega Drive, SNES and PC Engine this time round. And the gimmick? Of course, instead of awarding the games with status of either trick or treat for Halloween, this time we will be putting the game on the Wranker Clause naughty or nice list for Christmas. Once again, the most rigorous of ranking systems. Don't roll your eyes at me, get in the Christmas spirit. With most 16-bit games not having massive depth, all games played only took around an hour to complete, and with no real storyline to speak of, this is going to be a little more quick fire than our last outing. And I'm going to try and make this video a little shorter than usual, because not every video has to be over an hour long, and definitely not because I left this one a little late. As always, for the authentic experience, all games were played on real hardware with EverDrives due to power versions being 50Hz and upscaled using the RetroTink 4K. So, with that being said, let's see what the 4th generation had in the way of Christmas-themed games, shall we? Honestly, there wasn't a great deal of choice when picking games to cover in the 16-bit realm, but I think I picked a good bunch from that small pond. And while talking about ponds, segue successfully executed, we come to our first game, James Pond 2, codename Robocod, which I will refer to simply as Robocod for brevity. Released in 1991, Robocod is a game published on many platforms. Like many platforms, the first being for the Atari ST, Commodore Amiga and Sega Mega Drive. For all intent and purposes, the same game, just with visual and audio differences due to hardware. The Atari ST was the worst version due to the weaker hardware, and although consoles like the Mega Drive and the SNES were far more geared towards this kind of 2D, scrolling platformer, I always felt the Amiga game was the best version. There is just something about how the Amiga handles gradients that I loved. I know, who cares about gradients? Open any Adobe Media app, draw a shape, boom. Perfect gradient. But that wasn't the case back in the day. This is the sky in the Mega Drive version compared to the Amiga. This was due to the copper coprocessor being able to halt instructions by scanline. Moving on from banging on about the enthralling subject of gradients, all the graphics in the Amiga version were superior, using raster effects to create a far richer appearance, with also more detailed background animations using impressively complex parallax scrolling. All other iterations would be considered ports, released years after the original, and there were a lot of ports spanning over an amazing 26-year span. Ready? Here we go. Amiga CD32, Archimedes, Commodore 64, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Gear, Master System, MS-DOS, Nintendo DS, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, PlayStation 2, Super Nintendo. To be fair, the Switch version is more of a remake than a port, which is why I didn't consider it as a base for this retrospective. I'm not going to go through all the differences. That would take a while. I will leave a link to a good video showcasing that in the description. but almost all the interesting differences come from the intros. This was the standard and original opening, depicting James Pond soaring through the ice, jumping out to the adulation of the penguins, needing help to save their friends from the evil Dr. Maybe. Very clever. I know, the Mega Drive gets rimmed out for its occasionally terrible soundtracks, but tell me this doesn't suit the RoboCop theme perfectly. Most of the games have some iteration of this, albeit with their own nuances due to hardware differences. The biggest change came when the Game Boy Advance added this excellent alternate opening scene. This was copied on both the Nintendo DS and the PS2, but the best intro came on the PS1. By best, I mean so bad it's good type energy. Just look at this. It's crazy this made it into a published, beloved game. Bearing in mind, this was released in 2003, there was better animation on Newgrounds in 2003. My first introduction to Robocod was on the Amiga 500 back in the day. Yes, this is a game I have a lot of nostalgia for. I played it all the time, so I'm being upfront by saying I always loved this game. Unfortunately, my Amiga has succumbed to the dreaded leaky battery. Don't worry, I cleaned it, but I think damage has been done to Gary. I repeat, Gary is down. I will fix this, but I didn't have time to do it for this video, so I went with the Mega Drive release here, which is very good in its own right. The plot isn't that deep. It carries on from the first game, where James Pond destroyed the Acme Oil Company, with James Pond's arch-enemy version of Blofeld, Dr. Maybe, surviving and escaping to the North Pole. Of course, evil is going to evil, and what could be eviler than occupying Santa's workshop, taking the Jolly Fat Man's helpers hostage, and then turning them into villainous creatures. James Pond, equipped with his new RoboCod armour, is given the mission to infiltrate the workshop, rescue the hostages, obtain the presents, and finally put an end to the evil doings of Dr. Maybe. In terms of gameplay, Robocod is very fun, if not a little difficult on the first playthrough. The controls are the basic platformer fare, with its killer move being the body stretch. Yes, James Pond can now infinitely stretch his torso to reach higher levels. Not sure how a RoboCop type suit allows this kind of stretch Armstrong move without killing James, but there you go. It's not something you use very often in the game, but at the time it was common to have a mechanic to set your game apart only to not use it very much. The game consists of an overworld area where the player can explore and pick a level by entering these doors. The levels are very well designed, with the gameplay feeling very diverse. I remember one of my favourite aspects of this game being the power-ups and vehicles. James Pond can get wings, fly a plane, drive a car, and even ride a ruddy bathtub. I mean, come on, how great is that? The game ends with Santa and James Pond teaming up to take out Dr. Maybe. And for any doubters out there thinking this isn't a Christmas game, what is more Christmassy than that? It goes without saying, this is absolutely dripping with satire and very British humour. James Pond, Robocod, Dr. Maybe, and the game over screen where James Pond is pulled off of the screen with the penguins that were so happy to see him arrive saying kippers for tea. Tea meaning dinner for our American friends, but tea can also mean tea, so it's very confusing. The last thing to mention is the product placement in the game. Don't remember product placement in James Pond 2? Then you are probably outside the UK, because the version we got was ingrained with McVitie's penguins. Wait, do Americans have penguins? No. Okay, I'll show you this and it will tell you everything you need to know.
It's not a bad life, eh, Murray?
No.
Having a contract to do these penguin commercials.
No, I suppose so.
Good money, good perks, eh?
Mind you, Alvin, there's a lot of sharks in the film business.
It's not so much the sharks I'm worried about. It's more the killer whales.
Pick up a penguin.
Not helpful? Basically, penguins are biscuits covered in chocolate with a joke on the back of the wrapper continued on the inside. They have been a mainstay in British culture for a long time, with the catchphrase "hiccup a penguin," and in our version, the chocolate bars were littered throughout the game. It wasn't a bad thing though. In fact, it's one of my most vivid memories of Robocod. And so ends our mini lesson on British culture. See, we learn things here. Overall, Robocod looks great, sounds great, plays great. It's just a great time. Then and now. Sure, I'm totally biased regarding this game, but there really isn't anything to dislike. If I was trying to be fair, sometimes the enemies can be a little cheap, situated in places you have to go, with little chance of avoidance without previous knowledge. But apart from that, this is as classic as a classic game can be. Of course, this makes it onto the nice list, and it's well worth playing for the uninitiated. Yes, I know. Home Alone. Very cliche, right? Well, it's kind of hard to miss it off the list, and you should be happy. I was originally considering making a whole video covering the Home Alone games. But I made a rule on this channel, not to cover games I have watched others' videos on so as to not copy others' ideas subconsciously. And considering AVGN's video got 10 million views, and had a fucking cameo from Kevin McAllister himself, it wasn't something I was touching with a 10-foot barge pole. But a brief look at my favourite seems acceptable. Once again, we had many different versions of this licensed movie tie-in of various quality. I tried them all, with mixed opinions. Tie-ins were made for Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo Entertainment System, Sega Mega Drive, Master System, Game Gear, Nintendo Game Boy, Amiga, MS-DOS. But unlike Robocod, these are all very different games, so the only game I'll be talking about today is the Mega Drive version, as it was my favourite, with the most unique gameplay. FYI, I did consider the SNES version, but these characters being the Wet Bandits is unforgivable. Look at this Al Capone looking motherfucker. A quick word on this being a Christmas game. While the Home Alone movie is undoubtedly Christmas themed, and while the game certainly carries on those themes, I did find something interesting while researching. Disclaimer, I'm only including this as a curiosity as there is no way to verify this information. But searching the interwebs brought me to this page of a relatively small podcast. The Arcade Attack podcast. No shade, I love these small podcasts. I listen to the Retro Hour every week. They covered Home Alone for the Mega Drive back in 2017, and upon scrolling down their page, there is only 2 comments, both left by Michael Latham. He was a designer for the game, and he mentioned how this was a rushed title due to licensing, and marketing also kept him from using Christmas as a theme due to concerns over sales. There is no way to confirm whether this is really Michael. He unfortunately passed away in 2021, but it's certainly an interesting look into this game's development if true. I'm not going to recap the whole story of John Hughes' classic Christmas movie. I'm sure even a small amount of people that hasn't seen the film know what happens. Plus, all you need to know for this game is 8-year-old Kevin McAllister has been accidentally left home alone for the Christmas period, and he needs to protect the houses in his neighbourhood from the elusive criminals, the Wet Bandits, a moniker earned from them flooding houses after robbing them. That will be relevant in the game. As I said, Home Alone has a very unique gameplay cycle. At the start of the game, you're given an ETA to when the police will attend, and as the player, you have to keep the Wet Bandits busy until the timer runs out. Kevin gets a short amount of time at the start of the game to visit the neighbouring houses, riding a jet-propelled sled. You set up the traps, preempting the arrival of Harry and Marv. We get traps such as marbles, toy cars, oil puddles, and the most relevant to the movie, the blowtorch. My favourite animation in the game. When the Wet Bandits arrive in their van, They will randomly pick a house, and this is where the fun begins. We get 2 bars, loot, which is technically the player's health, and pain, the health bar Marv and Harry share. Loot goes up by the wet bandits successfully opening safes, and pain increases when they walk into the trap set. Hazards in the house hit them. And then there's the weapons. Kevin starts with a basic BB gun, a callback to the film. But the craftable weapons were my favourite part. Items are picked up in the houses and by knocking over snowmen outside, which can be used to craft all different kinds of weapons. I couldn't remember the combos, so I used a cheat sheet made by 101 Gaming. Shout out to them, and they are all fun to use. The level ends when the pain bar is full when the wet bandits retreat, or the loot bar is full, leading them to flood the house with Kevin pulling the classic pose. Another great callback. That is the basic cycle of the game. The wet bandits will continue to go to the different houses until Kevin loses too many, or you keep them occupied until the police arrive. It's a really intriguing concept. Not many games start by telling the player how long the game will last, but Home Alone puts it front and centre. This all gives the game a lot of replayability, with all the item placements and the route of the wet bandits being totally random. I can't think of many games of the era using this concept hindering the antagonists. Probably the only game I can think of that even comes close to this type of game would be The Haunting starring Poltergeist. Once stopping the wet bandits for either 20 minutes on beginner or 40 on hard, the police arrive and the game is over. Seriously, helicopters? And it took 40 minutes to attend. Not in this neighbourhood. Home Alone on the Mega Drive is fun, if not a flawed game. The graphics are really impressive. Harry, Marv and Kevin look like the characters from the film. And the animations when shooting the wet bandits are endlessly fun. Part of the attraction here is creating all the different guns to see the animations. This was my favourite. Funnily enough, I think the game's biggest strength is also its biggest downfall, the gameplay system. That timer is very short. 20 minutes wasn't really an acceptable length of a game, even back then, with even the 40-minute hard mode being on the wrong side of an hour of gameplay. Apart from the charge meter on the sled being a little reductive and the music not being the best on the system, carrying over nothing from the film, I don't have many complaints here, and a sign of any good game is I would happily play it again, giving us the second name on the nice list this year. Moving away from the Mega Drive, it's time to play the only game on the PC Engine that could even slightly constitute as a Christmas game, a tie-in for Die Hard. Listen, I'm not having the Die Hard isn't a Christmas movie debate here. I made my feelings perfectly clear in last year's seasonal episode when I played Die Hard Nakatomi Plaza. Check that out if you want to know my take on the argument. Spoiler, it's a Christmas movie. So yeah, last year I wanted to cover a Die Hard game for Christmas, and this was a consideration. I even mentioned it in that video, but there really wasn't enough on the bone, making it a poor candidate for a full retrospective, but an excellent choice for a quick 5-minute overview. Surprisingly enough, this is the only Die Hard game released within the 4th generation of consoles, during a time when the movie was still massively relevant. Released in 1989, only a year after John McTiernan's classic action film hit the silver screen, this was a Japanese exclusive, and as those Japanese lessons I spoke of in the last episode aren't going great, I lucked out with this getting a fan translation, which is what we played here. Not that it really matters, the dialogue is far from important. The game starts out in the jungle. Never realised Los Angeles has a massive jungle in Century City. Well, I've never been to California, so the game must be right. This is followed by a waterlogged swamp. Well, I know Florida, somewhere I have visited, is built on swampland, so maybe the same is also true in Cali? Okay, I'll stop being a facetious prick and get to my very telegraphed point. This is not a die-hard game. Well, it is, but in name only. When I first loaded this off the Turbo EverDrive Pro, I had to double check this was the correct game and not some bloody wolf clone. Yes, if ever there was a genuine argument to be made that Die Hard isn't Christmas themed, then this game is it. Now, take everything I say here with a pinch of salt, because we are going to do something that makes me feel really dirty. Cite information directly from Wikipedia. You gross. Paraphrasing for brevity, this started life as a completely different game until the publishers, Nihon, acquired the rights to the Die Hard license to try and increase interest, at which point the developer, Packing Video, made changes to try their best to tie it in. I tried to verify this with no luck, with even their source cited on Wikipedia not mentioning this information. The reason I'm telling you is because it makes perfect sense. Strangely enough, Packing Video, albeit with Activision Publishing, also developed the infamous Die Hard title on the NES. And we can argue about the quality of that game all day long. I think it's fun. The internet disagrees, it is what it is. But what is undeniable, it's recognisable as a Die Hard tie-in with duct crawling, a foot health meter and the Nakatomi logos. Effort was clearly made, something that can't be said for the PC Engine version. The worst thing is about this game is at its core, the PC Engine version isn't a bad game. I mean, it's not great, but it's a fun little top-down shooter. I enjoyed many aspects of this, my favourite being the pretty tight gameplay. At times, with the slow-moving bullets, it turns into a hybrid shmup, dodging the gunfire. Also, the bosses, especially the final showdown with the helicopter on a rooftop, was enjoyably intense. Yes, of course, you remember when John McClane did battle with a helicopter at the end of the movie, right? Sorry, I'm being a knobhead again, but you can really tell where they tried to shoehorn in any kind of link to the movie. This was mainly done through the boss fights, throwing down with Tony and Carl. Apart from that, we get this very pixel art version of what I assume is supposed to be Bruce Willis at the end of each stage. And these short animated cutscenes after boss battles, also done in the pixel art style. I actually quite like these. Apart from that, the music is incredibly pedestrian. And the visuals really are what I would expect to see on the NES, not the 16-bit PC Engine. At the end of the day, this is a piss-poor Die Hard tie-in, but a very competent top-down shooter. And for that reason, Die Hard gets a piece of coal in its stocking for Christmas. Yes, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. You don't get to pull this bait and switch on me and think you're going to get on the Wranker Claw's nice list. Yes, it's time to finally address the enigma that is Daze Before Christmas, a game I also very briefly mentioned last year. I know, everyone has heard of it, and of course, everyone knew about it well before the internet made it famous. But chances are, you really didn't. I know I certainly never knew about this back in the 90s. In fact, I would go out on a limb and say, unless you are Australian, German, or have been heavily into Mega Drive, Genesis, SNES, rare game collecting before the popularisation of the internet, you would not know about this game sans YouTube. How do I know this? Well, if taken on face value, Google Trends tells us everything we need to know, not to mention before the holiday period of 2011. And it's funny how every following year the game has received some traction around Christmas. So what happened in 2011? Oh, nothing much. Only the world's biggest video sharing site coming into true global popularity. Now, I can't find the actual video that made the populace aware of this obscure game, unfortunately. Old YouTube is notoriously hard to navigate, taking in consideration deleted videos and accounts. The video that meets the required peak of both oldest and most viewed is LGR's effort in 2012, with a very young Clint reviewing the SNES version. But this was still a year after interest seems to have been peaked, and that was all I could find. So if anyone watching this video remembers what started this trend, I would love to know. Let me know in the comments. The earliest mention I could find on the internet is an old WordPress site, Middle School Gaming, a review written on the 12th of December 2003. And of course, MU Paradise had the ROM file uploaded. RIP MU Paradise. Psst, Temper Monkey is your friend. The reason I have gone deeper into the subject of Days Before Christmas's infamy is twofold. Firstly, I'm sick to the back teeth of aficionados pretending they were always ahead of the curve. And secondly, Days Before Christmas is dull as dishwater. And I found this far more interesting than the actual game itself. Days Before Christmas is exactly what I would expect from a game cashing in from the holiday season. A very early showing of shovelware, if you will. In the beginning of the game, we get a few explanation pages regarding the plot. And it doesn't make much sense, seeming more concerned with rhyming sentences than coherently conveying the story. It's when looking in the manual, the story is a little clearer, albeit in that same hack writing style. I know, the story is so secondary here, they could have just left it out entirely. But for completion, I will summarise. And no, I'm not reading this rhyming shite. It's the Days Before Christmas, and Louse the Mouse is scheming. He and Mr. Weather, the timekeeper, and the evil snowman are joining forces to bring down Christmas. After scaring off all the elves, they stole all the children's presents and cursed them? Jesus Christ, what is this shit? Sorry, I'll stop. Santa senses something is very wrong. Then, we are warned, beware of the potion because it will turn Santa into the Anti-Claus, sending him on a rampage of rage? Okay, I'm done. Basically, Santa needs to save Christmas and cups of coffee turned him into the Anti-Claus. Why? Don't know. Don't worry about it. None of it is really important. The chaotic storyline is just a precursor to an absolute mess that is this game. For a start, there's a lot of levels here, each one based on the advent calendar. So, 24 in total. Sometimes they are very intricate, and sometimes this constitutes as a level. On top of that, Days Before Christmas makes one of the biggest faux pas in my book, repeating levels. We have such hits as generic indoor level, generic cave level, and even more generic outside snow levels. We do get some nice sleigh levels I enjoyed, needing to drop presents down the chimneys. The gameplay is meh, but I like the visuals of these. Visiting Japan, Russia, the UK and the US of A. We'll just ignore that Christmas isn't recognised as a holiday in Japan, and the Russians follow the Julian, not the Gregorian calendar, meaning they celebrate Christmas on the 7th of January. Yes, I'm taking this game way too seriously. I don't know what it is, but there is just something about shovelware that makes me want to tear it apart. The mechanics are basic as basic could be. Santa can jump, throw magic, and turn into the Anti-Claus when these cups of what I assume is coffee is collected. The Anti-Claus is the most tacked on part of this game. It's made a big deal of, mentioning it in the opening and even depicting him on the select screen. This is Days Before Christmas's killer move, like the stretch move I was talking about in Bocod. But here, there is just zero interesting implementation of the mechanic. When transformed into Anti-Claus, Santa is completely immune from damage, but can't pick up the presents for the sleigh stage. It's just so disjointed and weird. Was there anything I liked? Well, the Christmas music is tolerable. The graphics are nice and bright, I suppose. But apart from that, this is a damp squid of a game. Interestingly, this is a game made by Funcom, the developer of Conan Exile and Dune Awakening. Both very popular games, still with an active player base to this day. Funcom is still going strong, albeit now with the backing of Tencent. Good God, the CCP really is playing the long game. Days Before Christmas is proof a developer doesn't need to stay on the shovelware path once walked. It can just be a jumping off point. which is nice to see for once. Of course, this is on the naughty list. Absolutely no debating that. There really isn't anything here that makes me ever want to play this again. Okay, last game, and we're finishing strong with a Batman tie-in game. Yes, of course, it's Batman Returns. How else could I work Batman into a Christmas video? But is Batman Returns a Christmas film? Well, let's ask Michelle Pfeiffer.
I don't really think of it as a Christmas film.
Fuck off, Michelle. Nah, to be fair, it's not. But I've said previously, Christmas theming is enough for a game to qualify as a Christmas game. And considering Batman Returns on the SNES has falling snow in the intro along with a massive Christmas tree in the parallax backgrounds means I have no qualms including it here. Now once again, addressing a topic I'm getting sick and tired of by this point. The ports. This game was released on all Sega's consoles of the time, including the Mega CD. But the game I wanted to talk about was the SNES version of Tim Burton's underrated sequel, with all them being very different games. Nintendo's offering, although released a year later, is by far my favourite, so I'm going with that here. Batman Returns is very much a product of its time. Side-scrolling beat-em-ups were hot property, especially with the hardware finally becoming somewhat comparable to the titles you could play in the arcades. The links to games like Final Fight are impossible to ignore, but I find this a much better game than Final Fight. The biggest problem I have with that game is it bores me. It's great for the first few levels, but there really is a thin line between fun and repetitive, and that's a line Batman Returns walks perfectly. Not only is the typical side-scrolling action very well executed, we also get vertical platformers, Batmobile driving sections, and some really challenging boss battles. One thing sometimes Batman games can get wrong is the use of the utility belt. Much like the gadgets in Bond games, often they are added without much use unless you go out your way to use them. But not here though. There are sections you must use the Batarang, sections where the grappling hook must be used to get past fire-engulfed floors. And then there's the test tubes, the game's special move, equivalent to the backup in the Streets of Rage and must be used on the bosses. I could wash the balls of this game all day long. But one thing that took Batman Returns to that next level for me was the grappling throwing moves. They are so much fun. The throw is superbly animated. Then, if you can pull it off, you can grab one enemy in each hand and bonk these knuckleheads together. But then, there is the best throw. Walking along the level, all of a sudden, a random wall appears in the background. My original thought was, that's nice, adding depth to the level. But then, I pressed up and throw, and this happened. The broken glass, the sheer impact of the move, just chef's kiss. This is, at its best, a homage to Splatterhouse, if not outright plagiarism. But the difference being, that's what Splatterhouse was, that move. Think of Splatterhouse, and your first thought is turning the enemies into paste by batting them onto the back wall. But in Batman Returns, this is just the icing on top of the Christmas cake. See what I did there? Batman games had a real problem during the 16-bit era. Sunsoft's effort on the low-powered NES was to be the standard all past and future Batman games were to be judged, even better than the Mega Drive counterpart. I have played that game to completion for my Plays channel, and yes, it's a great game, but sometimes I feel other great Batman games can get lost in the narrative. It's proof for me that there are more great Batman games out there than just the 8-bit license tie-in. I experienced this a couple of years ago when I made a retrospective on the adventures of Batman and Robin. The Mega Drive version of that game was truly a fun game, but I think the SNES iteration is my favourite 2D Batman game. Yes, even better than the NES version. Batman Returns might not be better than those titles, but it's certainly a great game that looks fantastic with large detailed sprites and beautiful parallax backgrounds. The soundtrack is also stellar. The SNES was capable of such better sound than the Mega Drive when implemented properly, and that's certainly true here, with composers Jun Funahashi and Harumi Ueko absolutely nailing the tense, movie-like vibe of Batman. I would have no hesitation to play this game again. In fact, it might even work its way into my Christmas rotation. There is absolutely no doubt Batman Returns belongs on the nice list, ending our dive into 16-bit Christmas games on a high note. Christmas games really are a conundrum for creators. If you have never made a YouTube video, excellent choice by the way, you probably don't get it. I didn't prior to 2021. It's such a shame the season, in my opinion, that brings the best out of people brings the worst out of the gaming sphere, pushing out lazy shovelware and cash-in seasonal trash. The problem is, I can see the other side of that metaphorical coin. What's the point of putting money and time making a truly great Christmas game for it only to become a seasonal curiosity? We saw that here today. I had to really bend and contort the rules to make a somewhat cohesive video about Christmas games from the 4th generation. Even the Mega Drive tie-in to one of the classic Christmas movies was, allegedly, trying to cut out those seasonal links. Ironically, the worst game we covered today was the only game that really has the theme of Christmas at its very core. Days Before Christmas proves my point perfectly, being largely irrelevant until the internet made it the de facto 16-bit seasonal game, seeing a bump in intrigue every December only to go back to the depth from which it came until the following year. And so the cycle continues. Okay, I'm going to leave Days Before Christmas alone. The point has been made and it's done. So, stepping away from the bad, it's time to get into the spirit of the season and talk about the good experiences we had here. Best Game Award. If I was handing out rankings, is an easy one for me. James Bond 2 was just such a fun game to replay all these years later. The gameplay was excellent. The visuals, depending on platform, were pleasing. It's just a great example of how to create a competent Christmas-themed game. Make it enjoyable and don't take yourself too seriously. The surprise package for me was definitely Batman Returns. Obviously, this is subjective, because if you've played that game before, you would have already been well aware of how good this one is. Batman Returns was a pleasure to play, and if you haven't played this yet, writing it off as a tie-in not worth your time, you might want to re-evaluate that position. And finally, as for the last two games, they are decent efforts. With both Die Hard and Home Alone, a playthrough came in at under 50 minutes of gameplay, so neither outstays their welcome. But at the same time, didn't make me regret playing them. Shame though, because if Die Hard was called something like Operation Death Khan or something equally dramatic, not lying to me regarding this being a tie-in, I certainly would have looked at it with a more favourable eye. But sorry Die Hard, you don't get to come into my channel, then piss on my boots and tell me it's raining. That's your lot for Christmas this year, kids. Hope you enjoyed seeing what Wranker claws left under the tree to unwrap. Subscribe, like, dislike, whatever you want to let YouTube know I'm alive. This will be the last multi-game video for a while, and normal service will resume in the next video. I think this format will be something I save for specials exclusively. We'll see. Anyway, I hope you all have a great Christmas. And with all that being said, be good, stay safe, and I will see you next time.